sacred harmony, where we move through the messiness of being human towards the magic of being whole. Joining us today is Morgan Boszilkov, a spiritual life coach, plant medicine facilitator, and heart forward guide who reminds us that the love, worthiness, and acceptance we chase already lives within us. From darkness to light, she's walked the path and now walks with others. Welcome to the show, Morgan. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Mhm. So, Morgan, you speak about finding enoughness within. What was the turning point where you stopped seeking validation outside and began the journey inward?
Well, that's a great question. For me, it was over 40 years of trying to find the the wholeness that I was looking for within outside of myself. So I followed the recipe that was given to me by society and my family, and all of the ways that the external world said, this is the way to have a complete, happy life. This is the happily ever after recipe. And I did all of the things that I thought I was supposed to do, and I still felt like I wasn't enough. And the universe really kept, the image that's coming to my head right now is like shutting doors. It was as if I would climb really hard to get to the door that was good school, right? Getting into a good school for college, for example. And then when I got there, I'd open the door and then it was just not what I expected. It didn't solve anything for me. I still had all of the same emptiness, um, and lack of sense of wholeness that I had before I before I got there or accomplished that thing. Same with marriage, having children, having a good job, all of the external things that I had been conditioned to think were the answers to the inner solution, the outer answers for the inner problems. Um, None of those things solved them for me. So after having all of these kind of doors like shut to the inner wholeness, I got to the point where my life was crescendoing in its suffering and things were very, very hard. And I was desperate, honestly. There's that sense of like being on one's knees, asking for help, looking for help from something greater than myself because I had tried all of the ways that myself knew how to do things. And none of those were the way. It had to come from something greater than myself. And surrendering to God was in the universe. I didn't have a sense of God at the time, was the way that I became closer to myself and started healing from within rather than looking outside of myself.
Hmm. That's amazing. And was it clarity or did it come through a series of breakdowns and breakthroughs?
I think I had many, many breakdowns through most of my life, but I didn't really have a breakthrough until I had mushrooms for the first time, psychedelic psilocybin, in an attempt to move past the PTSD from cancer that was crippling me in my life, in addition to other things that were really difficult at the time. My fear of death was crippling, and I went into research mode and found that psilocybin is not for everyone, but for me, I was drawn to it as a way to help myself move through my fear of death. And it turns out that that connection to the divine and my inner self that I experienced through my journey helped me in all areas of my life and not just my fear of death from cancer coming back.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes the pain of not being enough is exactly what cracks us open.
Yes. Yeah, there's a sense of when we've tried all of the things that we think we should do, when we've should ourselves to death, what what do we do then? We start looking within or to the divine. Um, there's a moment where for me, I think I said I give up. Like I give up trying to do all the things that I've been conditioned to do. There has to be more. It was an existential crisis. So the breakthrough towards enoughness came from realizing that I couldn't solve the enoughness by the things I was doing in my life and what I was achieving. And it was more about what I was being from the inside out.
Mm-hmm. That makes so much sense. And as a certified plant medicine facilitator, how do you see these sacred medicines reshaping the way we heal spiritually and emotionally?
Well, in my first ceremony, I can remember very distinctly hearing the message that the mushrooms are here to help us remember. And like I said, it's not for everyone. And the experience of connecting to the divine can be different for every person, whether it's being out in nature, having an experience with meditation or breath work. But for me, the plant medicine has been integral in reconnecting with the love, the oneness, the connectedness, and the things that really make life more beautiful and worth living. It moves us, you know, um, David R. Hawkins is a wonderful author and speaker, and he speaks of the map of consciousness. So for me, I believe I was spending most of my life in survival mode in the lower levels of consciousness, where I was in fight, flight, and freeze and fawn. And for me personally, I would say that most of my time was in freeze, fawn, and flight. I did not have the activation and the power and the inner strength to move into fight, which is even more activated because it's actually taking true action towards self protection and self love. So I was stuck in those immobilized, hopeless, helpless places of consciousness. And the plant medicine gave me a physical, mental, spiritual experience of something much beyond that level of survival mode. And even after the journey, then there was this remembering of something much greater than the survival mode that I had always lived in. There was a sense of love beyond the attached love of being codependent with another human, but the love of the divine, and physically experiencing that with my whole body, heart, and soul is something that cannot easily be forgotten. So the plant medicine kind of gave me this boost out of survival mode and into love and connectedness and wholeness so that I could remember it in my daily life and even just know within my inner self that that was a possibility rather than being stuck in the lost, helpless, and hopeless feeling that I honestly didn't know a way out of before then.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And are there risks when seekers use these tools without deeper integration or guidance?
Well, I laugh now at my first ceremony because it was less ceremonial and more of a desperate attempt to heal the deep suffering I was experiencing. So I laugh because I would never do it the way I did it that first time. And and it is a sacred experience. And when I say ceremony, I really mean that because there is a divine connection that is part of a plant medicine experience. So it requires a lot of preparation, respect, honor, integration, support, right? So if someone has done all of their due diligence and has decided that plant medicine is for them and they've checked with whatever doctors and mental health practitioners that they need to, and they've decided that that's what they need to do or want to do, then, I recommend that someone who is going down that path prepare with someone who has experience with this sort of therapy and journeying, and then be supported during the experience. For me, I was with a friend and had no idea what I was doing, and neither did they. So that's not ideal. Um, and I've learned so much since then. And then, most importantly, the integration, like you said, afterwards we can have as many epiphanies and beautiful connections to ourselves and the divine as we want, but if we don't learn to integrate those experiences and the lessons that we've learned about ourselves and the world into our daily lives, then it's really a missed opportunity and can be confusing and disorienting. Um, when we integrate properly, we can see ourselves more clearly. And this brings me to the bigger lesson that I've learned is that life itself is the ceremony, right? So some people are drawn to plant medicine, some people are drawn to other ways of moving through the healing of life. But plant medicine is like a crash course in seeing ourselves and our ego, how we're showing up in the world, how we're affecting others, the decisions that we're making are parts of ourselves that we have forgotten, or the parts of ourselves that are still in darkness that we haven't brought loving light to. Um, at this point, after I've done so much work in and out of plant medicine ceremonies, oftentimes plant medicine shows me the ways that I'm bringing my ego to different relationships. So I will see the ways that I could be more generous or more forgiving, less judgmental. I see the way I judge others, and that brings me back to the parts of myself that I'm judging and being self critical about, or living in perfectionism without bringing grace and compassion to my own life, and then I project that into the external world. So, those are the types of messages and lessons that if I just leave it in the ceremony and I don't bring it into my daily life, the opportunity is kind of lost to bring the healing into every day, to move the energy of survival mode and ego through me and out of me, and bring more light and love into my daily life, and then be able to project that light and love onto the world around me instead of projecting my fears and egoic expressions onto my family and friends and everyone I encounter. So integration is deeply, deeply important. It is the work itself.
Mm-hmm. It's not just about expanding, it's about coming back grounded, whole, and clear.
Right, right. The expansion and contraction is the cycle that I have experienced anyway. There are times for expansion and times for the inhale and the exhale, right? So we go out, we feel bigger, we feel more connected, we feel more alive, and then there's kind of this contraction back to self and looking at how am I showing up in every moment. And there are times when I feel like I need to just focus on one step in front of another, becoming more inward and introspective. And then oftentimes that leads to coming back out of the cave, right? And exhaling and being like, I'm ready to interact and share the light and support others in ways that I wasn't able to support them before, or connect with them in ways that feel more expansive and loving because I've come inward and done the inner work. But it is always that movement. There is no one destination, right? There's always the flow inward and outward, um, projecting and expanding, connecting, and then coming back to the self and healing and feeling and moving through the emotions that want to be felt.
100%. And you coach people through a wide emotional spectrum. What's one myth people believe about spiritual growth that actually keeps them stuck?
Oh, that's such a great question. Something that keeps people stuck. I think there's a transference of the ego from one thing to another. So oftentimes, the spiritual ego pops up when we shift our perfectionism from the external world to the internal world. And I know this from my own self experience as well, that we can bring our perfectionism from the doing in life to the being, where we start becoming critical of ourselves that we haven't, become spiritual enough, or we haven't helped the world enough, or we haven't become um, a higher consciousness like fast enough, right? There's just more versions of not being enough. It's just a different, it's a different rodeo, right? Like it's a different group of expectations that we feel comfortable pushing on ourselves and others. Like the comfort is in the judgment because that's what we're used to. The comfort is in the self-criticism. So instead of maybe judging ourselves with how we're achieving in our life with maybe money or relationships or friends, then it becomes how are we achieving in our spiritual life, and are we doing enough, being enough, transforming enough, healing enough? And that's just another opportunity to look at the not enoughness, right? And the judgment, the self criticism, and then the way that we're projecting that onto the world. How are we judging others for their spiritual journeys? It's a spiral, right? So we keep going inward and deeper, and the ego presents itself in new and different ways. So we just have to keep looking for opportunities to become aware of how it's showing up.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And how do you help clients embrace their shadows without shame?
Yes, that is something that I absolutely love, right? Because one of the biggest parts of my journey was moving through my own shame and guilt. So being able to hold a space for others while they are experiencing shame and guilt is an honor. And moving out of our stories when we're experiencing the feelings themselves is very impactful. So we've lost touch with our bodies in so many ways. And as children, just like Gabor Mate says, we choose attachment to our caregivers over our own authentic expression and intuition. So when I work with clients, oftentimes mm, connecting back with their intuition and their inner knowing while noticing the stories that come up is very transformative. So, for example, if someone is worried about a, an interaction with another person and they want to say or do a thing, let's say they want to leave a relationship or they want to tell the person that they're in a relationship with something that's bothering them. But what's stopping them and the inner conflict is the fear of losing the relationship or being judged or not people pleasing. And so rather than bypassing the feelings themselves, we notice what's going on in the body and get back in touch with how the emotion of that fear of disappointing another or the fear of loss of attachment to another person, like where is it in the body? Is it showing up as a burning in the solar plexus? Is it in the gut? Is it in the heart? Moving back into the inner knowing of the sensations of the body and then allowing the body to flow through those experiences. If we slow down and move out of the story in the head, right? The story can trigger the opportunity to feel the emotions. And then we move out of the head into the body, sit with the feelings as they come through without the story, right? Because shame and guilt are stories as well. So if we start attaching judgment to the sensations in our body, we're just creating more stories, like moving back into them. And that's okay, right? We can notice those too. We can say, oh, I feel like I shouldn't feel this. Okay, where's that showing up, right? It's all connected. So it's moving back into the feelings that want to come up. And the more we can move out of our heads and out of the dialogue that's attached to the feelings, the more we can allow the feelings to move the energy out of our bodies and out of our beings because they just want to be felt. They want to be felt in all the ways we weren't allowed to feel them as children. So the kind of the cycle that I help people move through oftentimes is thank you for the story. Thank you for the trigger from the external world. What is that attached to in terms of maybe how it wants to um, bring up old patterns and stories, right? And then where is that showing up in our bodies? And then slowing down enough and breathing through it to express, to move through, to give birth to the part of ourselves that wants to be fully seen and loved and integrated into our whole selves.
After all, light isn't real unless it's contrasted by the dark.
So I believe the light and the dark, we have all of these parts of ourselves that we've denied and kind of pruned from ourselves because we've deemed them unworthy. And bringing light and love to the parts of ourselves that we've denied or we haven't allowed to be fully expressed is a really important part to becoming whole. And the more that we can pick up the parts of ourselves that we've denied and say, I love you too, the part of us that's angry or the part of us that's sad or grieving, and the parts that we weren't encouraged to keep as children, we bring light and love to those and we allow them to step out of the shadows and bring them back into our wholeness. And then we can do the same for others. And sometimes the darkness, is necessary because it helps us feel more gratitude for the light when we do experience the light. And that journey from darkness to light is an opportunity to really feel alive and appreciative and feel the love that is within, since we have known, like you said, the contrast of the darkness.
Definitely. So, Morgan, thank you for showing us that sacredness isn't some distant concept. It's right here, in the truth of who we are. And to all tuning in, may you stop striving and start softening. May you remember you were always enough. This is Sacred Harmony, where your soul is safe to exist.